The Chicago skyline glittered like a constellation of ambition, its steel towers piercing the dawn. From the top floor of Caldwell Manor, Ethan Caldwell, a 35-year-old white American billionaire, stood motionless, his sharp blue eyes tracing the city he'd helped shape. The sprawling estate, perched on a wooded hill, was a monument to his success, a labyrinth of marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and silent hallways that echoed with absence. Ethan commanded billions at Caldwell Innovations, a tech empire revolutionizing artificial intelligence. Yet, as the morning sun spilled through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across his office, he felt an ache no fortune could fill. 15 years ago, a plane crash had stolen his parents, leaving a 20-year-old Ethan to inherit a company he barely understood. His father, Richard Caldwell, a titan of industry, had taught him that emotions were liabilities, weaknesses to be buried beneath strategy and control. Ethan had learned the lesson well. He avoided friendships, sidestepped romance, and kept even his closest advisors at arm's length. Physical contact, a handshake, a pat on the shoulder, made his skin crawl, a reminder of vulnerability he'd sworn to suppress. The manor, with its pristine rooms and untouched furniture, was less a home than a museum of his isolation. Each artifact a testament to a life curated for power, not warmth. He adjusted the cuff of his tailored navy suit, the fabric crisp against his lean frame, and glanced at the sleek desk where his laptop hummed with market updates. Caldwell Innovations was preparing for its most significant product launch in years. A neural network system poised to redefine predictive analytics. The board expected perfection, and Ethan delivered, always. But perfection came at a cost. Late nights bled into early mornings, and his meals were takeout containers littering his office when he remembered to eat. His board of directors had noticed, "A man of your stature must entertain properly," they'd insisted at the last meeting, their voices tinged with disapproval. "Pizza at a client dinner is an embarrassment, Ethan." He'd bristled at the critique, his jaw tightening, but he couldn't deny the truth. His lifestyle, functional for a solitary genius, clashed with the image of a CEO commanding respect. The intercom on his desk buzzed, pulling him from his thoughts. "Mr. Caldwell," came the calm, measured voice of Clara Wentworth, his housekeeper and assistant of a decade. "The new chef is here for her interview." Ethan's brow furrowed. A personal chef felt frivolous, an indulgence for men who cared about appearances more than substance. He'd agreed to the interview only to silence the board's nagging, intending to dismiss the idea after a perfunctory meeting. "Send her in," he replied. His tone clipped, pressing the intercom button with a sigh. He returned to the window, the city below a reminder of his dominion. Chicago was his chessboard, each move calculated, each victory hard-won. Yet, as he stood in the quiet of his office, the weight of his solitude pressed against him. He was a king in a castle of his own making, but the throne was cold, and the kingdom empty. The idea of sharing his space, even with an employee, stirred unease. Food was fuel, nothing more. What could a chef offer that he couldn't procure with a phone call? The door opened with a soft click, and Ethan turned, steeling himself for the intrusion. Amara Thompson stepped into the room, her presence like a warm breeze cutting through the sterile air. A Black American woman in her early 30s, she carried herself with quiet confidence, her dark curls pulled into a neat bun that framed her striking features. Her brown eyes, bright with curiosity, scanned the office, not with awe, but with a keen awareness, as if measuring the space and the man within it. She wore a simple black blazer over a cream blouse, professional yet approachable, and her smile, when it appeared, was both disarming and genuine. Good morning, Mr. Caldwell, she said, her voice clear and steady, extending a hand. I'm Amara Thompson. Ethan hesitated, his instinct to avoid touch warring with politeness. He shook her hand briefly, his grip firm but fleeting, and gestured to the leather chair across from his desk. Miss Thompson, he said, his voice cool, returning to his seat. Please, sit. He picked up her resume, his eyes skimming the page to avoid her gaze. You come highly recommended. Culinary Institute. 3 years at the saffron table. Impressive. He set the resume down, his expression neutral. But I'll be frank, I'm not convinced I need a personal chef. Amara's smile didn't waver, though her eyes sharpened with a hint of challenge. With all due respect, Mr. Caldwell, everyone needs to eat. And from what I've heard, a man running a company like yours could use meals that do more than fill the stomach. Her directness caught him off guard. Most people shrank under his scrutiny, intimidated by his wealth or the cold precision of his demeanor. But Amara met his gaze, her warmth a quiet defiance against his skepticism. He leaned back, folding his hands. And what exactly have you heard? He asked, his tone edging toward curiosity despite himself. That you work harder than anyone, she replied, unflinching. That you're brilliant but stretched thin. Food isn't just sustenance, it's energy, focus, and connection. My grandmother taught me that in her Atlanta kitchen. A good meal can change a day, even for a man who thinks he doesn't need it. Her words carried a conviction that stirred something in Ethan, a faint echo of a life he'd never known. Connection. The concept felt foreign, almost dangerous, yet her sincerity made it impossible to dismiss outright. He cleared his throat, regaining control. I host business dinners, Miss Thompson. I need someone who can deliver meals that impress clients, not connect with them. His voice was firm, but Amara's smile deepened, undeterred. Of course, she said, but even business meals should have soul. I can create dishes that close deals and leave a lasting impression. Let me show you what I can do. Her confidence wasn't arrogance. It was rooted in something more profound, a passion Ethan couldn't ignore. He studied her for a moment, the silence stretching between them. His instinct was to end the interview, to retreat to the safety of his routines. But something about Amara, her poise, warmth, the way she seemed to see through his carefully constructed walls, made him pause. When can you start? He asked abruptly, surprising himself. Her eyes widened slightly, but she recovered quickly. Tomorrow, if that works for you, she replied, her smile broadening. I'd need to see the kitchen and my living quarters. Ethan said Clara will show you the guest cottage in the east wing, standing to signal the meeting's end. It's been prepared for your use. Amara rose, offering another handshake. This time, Ethan took it, though he released her hand quickly, the brief contact sending an unfamiliar jolt through him. Thank you, Mr. Caldwell, she said. You won't regret this. As she left, her footsteps soft against the hardwood, Ethan watched her go, a strange sensation stirring in his chest. It wasn't an attraction, just a flicker of curiosity, a whisper that something in his carefully ordered world had just shifted. He turned back to the skyline, the city sprawling beneath him, and wondered what it might mean to let someone in for the first time in years. The heavy oak door of Ethan Caldwell's office swung open with a faint creak, and Amara Thompson stepped into the sterile expanse of Caldwell Manor's nerve center. The room, with its polished mahogany desk and walls lined with leather-bound books, felt like a fortress, designed to keep the world at bay. Sunlight streamed through the towering windows, glinting off the Chicago skyline, but the warmth stopped short of Ethan, who stood behind his desk, his posture rigid, his navy suit a shield against intrusion. Amara's presence, however, carried a different light that seemed to challenge the room's cold precision. She moved with purpose, her black blazer crisp over a cream blouse. Her dark curls swept into a neat bun that accentuated the sharp intelligence in her brown eyes. Her warm, measured smile was a quiet invitation to engage, though Ethan's instincts urged him to retreat. He'd agreed to this interview to appease his board, who'd grown weary of his takeout-fueled business dinners. However, the idea of a personal chef, a stranger in his meticulously controlled space, grated against his need for solitude. Still, something about the resume in his hand, detailing Amara's training at the Culinary Institute and her tenure at the saffron table, had piqued his curiosity. Or perhaps it was the way Clara, his trusted housekeeper, had spoken of her. "She's different, sir. You'll see." "Good morning, Mr. Caldwell," Amara said, her voice clear and steady, like a note struck on a well-tuned piano. She extended her hand, her gaze meeting his without a hint of deference. Ethan hesitated, his aversion to physical contact flaring. A handshake was a small thing, but to him, it was a breach in the walls he'd built since his parents' death, a reminder of connections he'd learned to avoid. He took her hand briefly, his grip firm but fleeting, and gestured to the leather chair across from his desk. He said, "Miss Thompson, please sit." His tone was calm, almost clinical, as he lowered himself into his chair. He picked up her resume, his eyes scanning the page to avoid her steady gaze. "You come highly recommended," he said, his voice betraying none of the unease curling in his chest. "Culinary Institute, 3 years at the saffron table. Impressive credentials." He set the resume down, his fingers aligning it precisely with the desk's edge. "But I'll be honest, I'm not convinced I need a personal chef. My schedule is demanding, and I manage fine with what I have." Amara's smile didn't falter, but her eyes sharpened, with a glint of challenge flickering. "With all due respect, Mr. Caldwell," she said, leaning forward slightly, "managing isn't thriving. Everyone needs to eat, and from what I've heard, a man running a company like Caldwell Innovations could use meals that fuel more than just the body." Her words were direct, cutting through the formality of the moment like a knife through butter. Ethan's brow twitched, a rare crack in his composure. Most people, employees, board members, even competitors, trod carefully around him, wary of his wealth and the icy precision of his demeanor. But Amara spoke as if his billions were incidental, as if she saw the man beneath the title. "And what exactly have you heard?" he asked, his tone edging toward curiosity, despite his effort to remain detached. He leaned back, folding his hands, his blue eyes narrowing slightly. "That you're relentless," she replied, unflinching. "That you work through the night, close deals before breakfast, and drive your team to match your pace. But brilliance burns out without balance. My grandmother taught me that in her Atlanta kitchen, food isn't just fuel. It's focus, energy, even connection. A good meal can steady a man who carries the weight you do." Her voice had a warmth that felt almost tangible, like the scent of fresh bread wafting through a room. Ethan's chest tightened, not with discomfort, but with something unfamiliar, a stirring of recognition, as if her words touched a part of him he'd long buried. Connection. The word lingered, alien and unsettling. His father had drilled into him that emotions were distractions, weaknesses to be excised for success. After the plane crash that claimed his parents, Ethan embraced that philosophy, building Caldwell Innovations into a titan while sealing himself from the world. Food, to him, was a necessity, not a bridge to others. Yet Amara's conviction, rooted in a life he could only imagine, made him question the cost of his isolation, if only for a moment. He cleared his throat, reasserting control. "I host business dinners, Miss Thompson," he said, his voice firm. I need someone who can deliver meals that impress clients. Functional, professional, nothing more. I'm not interested in connection. The word felt awkward on his tongue, a foreign concept he wasn't sure he believed in. Amara's smile deepened, undeterred, as if she'd anticipated his resistance. Of course, she said, her tone smooth but resolute. But even business meals should have soul. I can craft dishes that seal deals and leave your clients talking for weeks, plates that say more about your vision than a PowerPoint ever could. Let me prove it. Her confidence wasn't bravado. It was grounded in a quiet certainty, a passion radiating from her like stove heat. Ethan studied her, the silence stretching between them, heavy with unspoken questions. His instinct was to dismiss her, to retreat to the safety of his routines. Coffee, takeout, solitude. But her presence, her unyielding warmth, held him in place. Why cooking? He asked suddenly, the question slipping out before he could stop it. With your skills, you could be anywhere, running a restaurant, not working in someone's kitchen. His curiosity surprised him, a breach in his usual detachment. Amara's expression softened, her eyes distant for a moment. Cooking's in my blood, she said. My grandmother raised me in Atlanta, teaching me to pour love into every dish. In her kitchen, I learned that food brings people together, even when the world tries to pull them apart. I want to share that, to build something of my own one day, a place where every plate tells a story. Working for you? It's a step toward that dream. Her honesty disarmed him, her ambition a mirror to his own, though hers was infused with a humanity he'd never allowed himself. Ethan's fingers tapped the desk, a rare sign of indecision. His board wanted this, but he didn't. Yet Amara's words, her poise, the way she seemed to see through his carefully constructed walls, made him reconsider. When can you start? He asked abruptly, the decision surprising even himself. Her eyes widened briefly, but she recovered with a nod. Tomorrow, if that suits you, she said, her smile broadening. I'll need to see the kitchen and my living quarters. Ethan said, Clara will show you the guest cottage in the East Wing, standing to signal the end of the meeting. It's been prepared for your use. Amara rose, offering her hand again. He took the contact, brief but electric, sending a jolt he couldn't name. Thank you, Mr. Caldwell, she said, her voice warm with promise. You won't regret this. As she left, her footsteps echoing softly in the hallway, Ethan stood motionless, his gaze lingering on the door. The office felt different now, as if Amara had left behind a trace of her warmth, a crack in the fortress he'd built. He turned to the window, the skyline unchanged, yet something within him had shifted. A spark, faint but undeniable, that whispered of possibilities he wasn't ready to face. The kitchen of Caldwell Manor, a cavernous space of stainless steel and white marble, had always been a relic to Ethan Caldwell. A room he passed through, not inhabited. Its gleaming appliances and spotless counters stood unused, a testament to his indifference to anything beyond black coffee and takeout. But the air was different on Amara Thompson's first morning as his chef. The scent of brewing coffee mingled with something sweeter, warmer, like summer captured in a pan. Ethan paused at the threshold, his tailored gray suit contrasting with the unexpected life now stirring in his sterile domain. Amara stood at the island, her dark curls tucked under a simple white bandana, her movements precise yet graceful, as she sliced peaches with a practiced hand. A cast-iron skillet sizzled softly, the aroma of butter and nutmeg curling through the room. She wore a navy apron over a cotton dress, the casual ease of her attire at odds with the formal grandeur of the manor. Her brown eyes flicked up as Ethan entered, and her smile, warm as the sunlight streaming through the window, caught him off guard. Good morning. Mr. Caldwell, she said, her voice bright but not overly formal. "I hope you don't mind. I started early. Your 8 a.m. conference call's coming up, and I thought you'd need something substantial." Ethan nodded stiffly, unsure how to navigate this intrusion into his routine. He wasn't used to sharing his mornings, let alone his kitchen. "How did you know about my call?" he asked, his tone sharper than intended, as he approached the counter cautiously, like a man stepping onto unfamiliar terrain. "Clara filled me in on your schedule," Amara replied, unfazed, sliding a plate across the island. "You'd want something light but energizing. This is peach-stuffed French toast, made with brioche and a touch of nutmeg. There's a protein smoothie, too, if you're in a rush." The plate was a work of art. Golden slices of toast, dusted with powdered sugar, topped with glistening peach slivers, and a drizzle of honey. A glass of deep green smoothie sat beside it, its surface flecked with chia seeds. Ethan stared, his usual coffee-only ritual suddenly feeling inadequate. "He said I usually have coffee," his voice flat, though his eyes lingered on the plate. The presentation was impeccable, but the care behind it, how Amara seemed to anticipate his needs, unsettled him. Her smile faltered momentarily, but there was no judgment in her gaze, only a quiet concern. "Coffee's fine for a jolt, but it's not enough to fuel someone who works like you," she said, wiping her hands on her apron. "Try a bite. If you don't like it, I'll wrap it up for later." Her tone was gentle and inviting, not pushing him, but offering a choice. Ethan hesitated, his instinct to retreat warring with the unfamiliar pull of her warmth. He sat at the counter, the leather stool cool beneath him, and picked up a fork. The first bite was a revelation. The brioche was soft, yet crisp, the peaches bursting with sweetness, tempered by a hint of spice. He couldn't suppress the slight sound of appreciation that escaped him, a rare breach in his controlled exterior. "This is good," he admitted, feeling inadequate. Amara's face lit up, her smile reaching her eyes, transforming the kitchen into something almost alive. "I'm glad you think so," she said, turning to pour him a cup of coffee. "Breakfast should be special. It sets the tone for the day, like a promise you make to yourself." She slid the mug toward him, the steam rising in delicate curls. Ethan watched her move, her ease in his space both foreign and strangely comforting, as if she belonged here in a way he never had. He took another bite, the flavors grounding him in a moment he hadn't expected to savor. "You talk about food like it's more than just eating," he said, his curiosity slipping through his guarded tone. "Why is that?" Amara leaned against the counter, her expression softening. "Because it is." Growing up, my grandmother's kitchen was the heart of our home. We didn't have much, but her food, collards, cornbread, peach cobbler, brought us together. It was her saying she cared, making hard days feel lighter. I want to give that to people, even someone who thinks he doesn't need it. Her words carried a sincerity that made Ethan's chest tighten, not with discomfort, but with a pang of something he couldn't name, longing, perhaps, for a warmth he'd never known. He shifted, uncomfortable with the intimacy her words evoked. He said, "I don't have time for that kind of thing," his voice cooler now, a reflex to rebuild his walls. "I need meals that serve a purpose, business functions, client meetings. That's what you're here for." He set down his fork, the half-eaten French toast, a silent admission that he'd enjoyed it more than he wanted to admit. Amara nodded, her smile undimmed. "I understand. But even those meals can have a little soul. I'll ensure your clients are impressed, Mr. Caldwell, but I can make you look forward to dinner too." Her confidence was quiet, not boastful, and it stirred something in Ethan, a flicker of anticipation he hadn't felt in years. "Will you need lunch today?" she asked, bringing him back to the moment as she cleared the counter efficiently. "I have a meeting downtown," he replied, standing, his suit jacket smoothing over his frame. "But dinner. Something simple. I'll be in my office late." He paused, then added, almost reluctantly, "What were you thinking?" Her eyes brightened, as if his question was an unexpected gift. "Grilled chicken with a lemon thyme sauce and roasted asparagus on the side. Simple but elegant. Something to unwind with after a long day." The way she described it, like a painter sketching a canvas, made the meal sound like more than food. Ethan nodded, the idea of looking forward to dinner a foreign but not unwelcome sensation. "That's fine," he said, turning to leave. He paused at the door, glancing back. "Thank you, Amara." Her name felt unfamiliar on his tongue, a breach of his usual formality, but it slipped out before he could stop it. "You're welcome," she replied, her smile soft but knowing, as if she sensed the shift in him, however small. As Ethan walked to his office, the taste of peaches and nutmeg lingered, a quiet challenge to the bland routine of his life. The manor, once a hollow shell, felt fractionally less empty, and he wondered, with a mix of unease and curiosity, what else this woman might awaken in him. The kitchen of Caldwell Manor hummed with quiet purpose as Amara Thompson prepared dinner, the rhythmic chop of her knife against a cutting board, blending with the soft sizzle of onions in a pan. The late afternoon light filtered through the tall windows, casting a golden glow over the marble counters, now cluttered with fresh herbs, a bowl of sweet potatoes, and a jar of her grandmother's homemade spice blend. Amara's dark curls were tucked under a bandana, and her navy apron bore faint smudges of flour, evidence of the cornbread she'd baked earlier. Her brown eyes were focused, but a faint smile played on her lips, as if the act of cooking tethered her to a more profound joy. Clara Wentworth, the manor's housekeeper, entered with a stack of linens, her gray hair neatly pinned, her expression warm but curious. "Smells like heaven in here, Amara," she said, setting the linens on a side table. "What's on the menu tonight?" Her voice carried the easy familiarity of someone who'd seen the manor through years of silence, a steady presence in Ethan's isolated world. "Grilled chicken with a lemon thyme sauce, roasted sweet potatoes, and collard greens," Amara replied, glancing up as she stirred the pan. "Simple, but it's got soul. Mr. Caldwell said he'd be working late, so I want something that'll reheat well, but still feel special." She paused, her smile softening. "My grandmother always said a good meal can make even the longest day feel kinder." Clara chuckled, leaning against the counter. "You sound like you were raised in a kitchen. I'm betting there's a story there." Her tone was an invitation, gentle but probing, and Amara sensed the housekeeper's genuine interest. Clara had been kind since her arrival, offering practical advice about the manor's quirks and Ethan's habits. But this was the first time she'd lingered, as if eager to know the woman breathing life into the house. Amara set down her spoon, wiping her hands on her apron. "I was," she said, her voice softening with memory. "My grandmother's kitchen in Atlanta was my whole world growing up. We didn't have much, a small house, a tight budget, but her cooking made it feel like we had everything. She'd make peach cobbler or fried okra, and suddenly the table was full of love, not just food." Her eyes grew distant, a mix of warmth and wistfulness. "She taught me that cooking's a way to tell stories, to hold people close even when life pulls them apart. That's why I became a chef. Not just to feed people, but to give them something to feel." Clara nodded, her eyes softening. "Sounds like she's a remarkable woman. And it explains why you're so good at this. But I'm curious. What's a chef like you doing cooking for one man in a place like this? You could be running your restaurant by now." Amara's smile tightened, and she turned back to the cutting board, slicing a sweet potato with deliberate care. "That's the dream," she admitted. I want to open a place called Soul Haven, Southern-inspired, but with a modern twist. A restaurant where every dish feels like coming home, no matter who you are. Her voice grew steadier, her ambition clear. But dreams take time and money. Culinary school wasn't cheap, and the industry, it's tough. People don't always take you seriously, especially when you don't fit their mold of what a chef should be. She paused, her knife stilling. I had a boyfriend back then, in school. Took credit for my recipes. Got himself a job at a fancy restaurant while I was left picking up the pieces. It taught me to be careful and build my career on my terms. Clara's brow furrowed, a flicker of indignation crossing her face. That's a low thing to do. But you've got talent, Amara. I saw it the moment you walked in. So why here? Why cook for Mr. Caldwell when you could be out there, making a name for yourself? Amara hesitated, her gaze drifting to the window, where the Chicago skyline loomed. This job's a stepping stone, she said. Cooking for someone like Mr. Caldwell means exposure, his clients, his network. If I can impress them, it's a chance to prove I'm more than just a line cook. But it's a risk too. Working for someone so powerful, it's easy to get overshadowed. I don't want to be known as Ethan Caldwell's chef. I want to be Amara Thompson, the chef who built something extraordinary. Her voice was firm, but a trace of vulnerability lingered, a fear of losing herself in the shadow of Ethan's wealth. Clara studied her, her expression thoughtful. You're wise to think that way. Deep down, Mr. Caldwell's a good man, but he's not an easy one. He's kept the world at a distance since his parents passed. You're the first person in years who's made this place feel alive. She paused, a knowing glint in her eyes. He noticed your French toast this morning, you know. I couldn't stop talking about it with you later. That's rare for him. Amara's cheeks warmed, but she shook her head, focusing on the greens she was rinsing. He's just not used to home cooking. That's all. I'm here to do a job, Clara, not to change him. But even as she said it, she remembered how Ethan's guarded expression had softened when he tasted her French toast. The slight sound of appreciation he hadn't meant to let slip. It had felt like a victory, however small, and it stirred something in her she wasn't ready to name. Clara raised an eyebrow, unconvinced. Maybe, but I've seen how he looks at you. Like he's seeing something he didn't expect. Be careful, Amara. He's your employer, and that line's tricky to walk. But if anyone can handle it, it's you. She straightened, picking up the linens. I'll set the dining room for dinner. Keep doing what you're doing. This house needs your kind of warmth. Amara returned to work as Clara left, the warning settling over her like a faint chill. She respected Ethan's brilliance and quiet intensity, but couldn't ignore the power imbalance between them. He was her employer, whose name opened doors she'd spent years knocking on. Getting too close, letting her guard down, could jeopardize everything she'd worked for, her reputation, dream, and independence. Yet, as she stirred the lemon thyme sauce, the memory of Ethan's reluctant smile lingered, a quiet challenge to her resolve. She pushed it aside, focusing on the task at hand. Soul Haven was her goal, and no amount of curiosity about the man in the manor would derail her. Still, as the kitchen filled with the comforting aroma of her cooking, Amara couldn't shake the feeling that she was already changing more than just the menu in Caldwell Manor. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Caldwell Manor's dining room, its polished mahogany table set for 8 under Clara Wentworth's meticulous care. Ethan Caldwell stood by the window, his tailored charcoal suit crisp against his lean frame, his blue eyes scanning the Chicago skyline with a tension that belied his usual composure. Tonight's dinner was no ordinary gathering. Caldwell Innovations was courting a major client, a Japanese tech firm whose partnership could secure a multi-billion-dollar contract for their neural network system. The board had been clear. Ethan's habit of serving takeout at such events was a liability, and this dinner needed to impress. Amara Thompson, his new chef, was about to face her first real test. Ethan turned from the window, his jaw tight. He'd hired Amara impulsively, swayed by her confidence and the unexpected warmth she brought to his sterile world. But this dinner was different. High stakes, high scrutiny. His board had suggested a catering service with a proven track record, and a part of him wondered if he'd been too quick to trust a chef whose impressive resume lacked corporate experience. He pushed the thought aside, adjusting his cufflinks, and headed to the kitchen, where the air was alive with the scent of roasting pecans and fresh herbs. Amara stood at the center of the kitchen, a vision of focus in her navy apron, her dark curls tucked under a bandana. She moved precisely, arranging plates with an artist's eye, each a canvas of color and texture. A tray of pecan-crusted chicken breasts rested beside a bowl of roasted sweet potatoes, their edges caramelized to a golden hue. A pot of collard greens simmered, infused with a hint of smoked paprika. Her brown eyes flicked up as Ethan entered, and she offered a small, confident smile. She said, "Everything's on track, Mr. Caldwell," wiping her hands on a towel. "The first course, chilled cucumber soup with dill, will be ready in 10 minutes. Ethan nodded, his gaze sweeping the kitchen. "This is a critical evening, Miss Thompson," he said, his voice cool but not unkind. "These clients expect perfection. I was advised to hire a catering service with more experience in this event." His words hung in the air, a challenge wrapped in doubt, and he watched her closely, searching for any sign of faltering. Amara's smile didn't waver, though her eyes narrowed slightly, a spark of determination flashing within them. "I understand the stakes, Mr. Caldwell," she replied, her tone steady. "But I've planned a menu that's not just food. It's a statement. 4 courses, each tailored to your client's preferences, with flavors that'll linger long after the deal's signed. You hired me for a reason. Let me show you why." She gestured to a clipboard on the counter, where a neatly typed menu outlined her vision. Cucumber soup, pecan-crusted chicken with sweet potatoes and greens, a citrus sorbet palate cleanser, and a dark chocolate tart with bourbon-infused whipped cream for dessert. Ethan picked up the clipboard, his brow lifting as he read. She'd accounted for dietary restrictions: Mr. Yamamoto's aversion to red meat, Mrs. Cortez's shellfish allergy, with a sophistication that rivaled any Michelin-starred restaurant. The menu was ambitious yet precise, balancing Southern warmth and modern elegance. "This is thorough," he admitted, setting the clipboard down. "But if it falls short, it's my reputation on the line." "And mine," Amara countered, her voice firm but not defensive. "I've worked too hard to let that happen. Trust me, Mr. Caldwell. These dishes will do more than impress. They'll start conversations." Her confidence was infectious, and for a moment, Ethan felt a flicker of reassurance, a rare trust in someone else's judgment. "Very well," he said, his tone softening. "I'll leave it to you. Clara will assist with the service." "The guests arrive in an hour." He turned to go, then paused, glancing back. "Don't let me down, Amara." Her name slipped out, a breach of his usual formality, and he saw her eyes widen slightly before she nodded. "She said you won't be disappointed," her smile returning, bright and resolute. As Ethan returned to the dining room, he felt a strange mix of anticipation and unease. Amara's presence was already changing the manner, but tonight would test whether her talent could match her conviction. The dinner unfolded like a symphony. Clara and a hired server moved seamlessly, delivering Amara's dishes quietly. The cucumber soup arrived first, its cool, herbaceous notes earning appreciative murmurs from the guests. The main course, pecan-crusted chicken, tender and flavorful, paired with sweet potatoes and greens, drew gasps of delight. Mr. Yamamoto, a reserved man, leaned forward, his translator conveying his praise. "This reminds me of home, but with a twist I've never tasted." Mrs. Cortez, a sharp-eyed executive, declared the dish unforgettable. When the chocolate tart arrived, its rich depth cut by the bourbon cream, the table was abuzz with conversation, and the clients were more relaxed than Ethan had ever seen. He sat at the head of the table, his posture composed, but relief washed over him inside. Amara had delivered, not just food, but an experience that softened the edges of a high-stakes negotiation. Ethan caught Clara's eye as the guests lingered over coffee, discussing terms with an almost personal ease. She gave a subtle nod, her lips curving in approval. When the clients finally departed, their handshakes firm and their promises of follow-up meetings enthusiastic, Ethan knew the dinner had been a triumph. He found Amara cleaning the last dishes in the kitchen, her apron now speckled with sauce. "You should have gone home hours ago," he said, leaning against the doorway, his voice softer than usual. She looked up, her smile tired but genuine. "She said I wanted to ensure everything was perfect," drying her hands. "How did it go?" Ethan admitted that it was more than perfect, surprising himself with his candor. They couldn't stop talking about the food. "You made tonight a success, Amara." Her name felt natural now, a shift he hadn't intended but couldn't deny. Her eyes lit up, a mix of pride and relief. "I'm glad I could help. Food has a way of bringing people together, even at a business table." She paused, then added, "I hope it made your night a little easier." "It did," he said, meeting her gaze. For a moment, neither spoke, the air charged with something unspoken, a mutual respect perhaps, or the faint stirrings of something more profound. Ethan cleared his throat, stepping back. "Good night, Amara." "Good night, Ethan," she replied, her voice soft, testing his name as if it were a new ingredient. As he walked away, the warmth of her food and presence lingered, a quiet promise that Caldwell Manor might never be the same. Spring sunlight spilled into Caldwell Manor's kitchen, softening the stark lines of marble and steel with a warm glow. Amara Thompson stood at the counter, her dark curls loosely tied back, her navy apron dusted with flour as she rolled out dough for her grandmother's peach cobbler. The air carried the sweet tang of ripe peaches and the faint spice of cinnamon, a comforting contrast to the manor's usual silence. Ethan Caldwell, usually cloistered in his office, had wandered in early this Saturday morning, his tailored sweater and slacks a rare departure from his formal suits. His blue eyes, typically guarded, held a trace of curiosity as he watched Amara work, her movements as fluid as a dance. "Amara said you're up early for a weekend," glancing up with a teasing smile. She'd grown accustomed to Ethan's predictable routine, coffee at dawn, office until midnight, but his presence now, unprompted, felt like a shift. "No meetings today?" Ethan replied, leaning against the island, his posture less rigid than usual. "Couldn't sleep." The admission was quiet, almost reluctant, and Amara noticed the faint shadows under his eyes, a sign of the relentless pressure of running Caldwell Innovations. "Nightmares?" she asked, her voice softening with concern as she sliced a peach, her knife gliding with practiced ease. She'd learned to read his silences, the way his jaw tightened when something weighed on him, and today he seemed more open, like a door left ajar. Ethan hesitated, his fingers tracing the edge of the counter. He never discussed personal matters, especially not with employees, but Amara's warmth had a way of unraveling his defenses. "Sometimes," he said finally, his voice low. My parents. Their plane crashed. It's been years, but I'm 20 again some nights, waking up to a world I wasn't ready for. The words spilled out, raw and unguarded, surprising him as much as her. Amara set down her knife, her brown eyes meeting his with quiet empathy. I'm so sorry, Ethan, she said, her use of his name deliberate, a bridge across their usual formality. Losing them like that, and then stepping into their shoes at Caldwell Innovations, that must have been overwhelming. He nodded, looking down at his hands, the memory heavy. I was just a kid, suddenly running a company. There was no room for mistakes or feelings. My father always said emotions were a weakness, so I learned to shut them out. His voice was steady, but the vulnerability in his eyes was new, a crack in the armor he'd worn for years. Amara's heart ached for him, but she sensed he needed more than sympathy. You don't have to carry that alone, she said gently. Come here. Help me with this cobbler. It's my grandmother's recipe. Nothing heals like her cooking. She slid a bowl of dough toward him, her smile an invitation to step out of his solitude. Ethan blinked, caught off guard. I don't cook, he said, his tone half protest, half intrigue. Cooking was Amara's domain, a world of instinct and warmth he'd never entered. Everyone can cook, she countered, her smile widening. It's just following instructions, and you're good at that. Come on, I'll show you. Before he could object, she guided him to the counter, handing him a rolling pin. She said she kicked the dough like this, demonstrating with firm, steady motions. Feel it. It'll tell you when it's ready. He followed her lead, his hands awkward initially, the dough sticking to his fingers. Amara laughed softly, placing her hands over his to guide him, her touch light but steady. Like this, she said, her voice warm. Not too hard, just enough to bring it together. The contact sent a jolt through Ethan, her closeness, the scent of her jasmine shampoo, the warmth of her hands, stirring something he couldn't name. He froze, acutely aware of her nearness, her breath soft against his cheek. Like this? He asked, his voice quieter, almost hoarse. Their eyes met, and the kitchen felt smaller momentarily, the world narrowing to the space between them. Perfect, Amara said, stepping back, seemingly unaware of the effect she'd had. You're a natural. The moment passed, but the air remained charged, a silent acknowledgement of something unspoken. They worked side by side, Ethan rolling dough, while Amara layered peaches in a dish, their banter lightening the mood. Ethan laughed for the first time in years, a real, unguarded laugh as flour dusted his sweater, Amara teasing him about his executive baking skills. When the cobbler entered the oven, its aroma filling the kitchen, Ethan felt lighter, as if creating something with her had loosened a knot inside him. This was unexpected, he admitted, wiping his hands. I didn't know I could enjoy something like this. That's what food does, Amara said, her smile soft. It brings you back to yourself. She paused, then added, You should do this more often. Step away from the office, I mean. The idea lingered, tempting and terrifying. Emboldened, Ethan took a breath. Amara, would you have dinner with me tonight? Not here. A restaurant, somewhere downtown. His voice was steady, but his heart raced, the question a leap into uncharted territory. Amara's smile faded, her eyes searching his. You mean, like a date? The word hung between them, heavy with implications. She set down the dish she was holding, her expression torn. Ethan, you're my employer. If we cross that line, it could complicate everything. My job, my reputation, my plans. I've worked too hard to risk that. Her voice was gentle but firm, her caution rooted in the power imbalance she couldn't ignore. Ethan's chest tightened, a pang of rejection he hadn't expected. "I understand," he said, his tone retreating to its usual reserve. "I shouldn't have asked. It won't happen again." He stepped back, his walls rising instinctively. "Don't apologize," Amara said quickly, her eyes softening. "It's not that I don't enjoy your company. It's just too complicated right now." She offered a small smile, trying to ease the tension. "This was fun, though. Let's call it a good morning." Ethan nodded, forcing a neutral expression. "Good morning, then." As he left the kitchen, the scent of cobbler followed him, a reminder of the warmth he'd briefly touched, and the barriers that still stood between them. Upstairs, Clara caught his eye, her knowing look suggesting she'd sensed the shift. "She's something special, isn't she?" she said quietly. Ethan didn't reply, but as he closed his office door, he couldn't shake the feeling that Amara had already begun to change him, whether he was ready or not. The evening air carried a chill as Ethan Caldwell pulled into the driveway of Caldwell Manor, his sleek black car cutting through the dusk. Exhaustion weighed on him, his blue eyes shadowed from a week of late nights at Caldwell Innovations. The upcoming product launch, a neural network poised to redefine predictive analytics, had consumed his days, leaving little room for anything else. Once a hollow shell, the manor had begun to feel different since Amara Thompson's arrival, her cooking infusing the space with a warmth he hadn't known he craved. But after her gentle rejection of his dinner invitation, an awkward distance had settled between them, their interactions polite but strained. Bright and musical laughter stopped him cold as he stepped into the foyer. It came from the kitchen, where he now associated with Amara's presence. But there was another voice, deeper, male, mingling with hers. Ethan's chest tightened, an unfamiliar pang twisting inside him. He moved toward the kitchen, his polished shoes silent on the marble floor, and paused at the doorway. Amara sat at the island, her dark curls loose around her shoulders, her navy apron discarded on a stool. Across from her was a man, broad-shouldered and handsome, with a warm smile mirrored hers. They shared a plate of cornbread, golden and steaming, and a bottle of red wine, their laughter filling the space like a melody. "Oh, Mr. Caldwell," Amara said, her brown eyes widening as she spotted him. She stood quickly, smoothing her cotton dress, her smile faltering. "I didn't expect you back so early." The return to formality, Mr. Caldwell, stung, a reminder of the line she'd drawn between them. Ethan's gaze flicked to the man, his jaw tightening. He said, his voice colder than he intended, a sharp edge cutting through the warmth of the scene. "I didn't realize you were entertaining guests." Amara's expression shifted, a mix of surprise and defensiveness. "This is my brother, Marcus," she said, gesturing to the man, who stood and extended a hand. "He surprised me with a visit. Marcus, this is Ethan Caldwell, my employer." "Nice to meet you, Mr. Caldwell," Marcus said, his handshake firm, his eyes assessing but friendly. "Amara's told me a lot about this place. Sounds like you're keeping her busy." His tone was light, but Ethan barely registered it, his mind caught on the word brother. Relief flooded him, unbidden and unsettling, followed by embarrassment at his assumption. "Has she?" Ethan said, his voice still clipped, shaking Marcus's hand briefly. "How interesting." He stepped back, his posture rigid, and the kitchen suddenly felt too small. "I'll be in my office. I'm not hungry." He turned to leave, ignoring the plate Amara had left in the warming drawer, its note promising grilled chicken and roasted vegetables. Amara's brow furrowed, sensing the shift in him. "We'll get out of your way," she said, gathering the plates, her movements quick. "I left your dinner ready if you change your mind." No need to rush, Ethan said, his tone stiff, already halfway out the door. Enjoy your evening. He retreated to his office, the laughter fading behind him, leaving a hollow ache. Sitting at his desk, he stared at the untouched reports, his mind replaying the scene. Amara's ease with Marcus, the warmth he'd mistaken for something else. The relief that Marcus was her brother only deepened his unease. Why had he cared so much? She was his employee, nothing more. But the lie felt thin, fraying under the weight of his growing feelings. An hour later, a soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Amara stood in the doorway, a tray in her hands, her expression troubled. I brought chamomile tea, she said, setting it on his desk, the cup's faint floral scent cutting through the sterile air. It helps with stress. You seemed upset earlier. Ethan looked up, his blue eyes guarded. I was surprised to find a stranger in my home, he said, the words sharper than intended. It caught me off guard. Amara's lips pressed into a thin line. Marcus isn't a stranger. He's my brother. And I'm sorry for not asking permission. It won't happen again. Her voice was calm but firm, a quiet challenge in her gaze. But that's not what this is about. He leaned back, his fingers tightening around the armrests of his chair. What are you implying? She said you were fine until you saw Marcus, crossing her arms. You could have asked me if you thought he was someone else instead of icing me out. I'm here to do my job, Ethan. But if you shut down like that, I can't. Her directness, so like their first meeting, pierced his defenses, forcing him to confront the truth. He sighed, running a hand through his hair, betraying his unease. I overreacted, he admitted, his voice softer now. I saw you with him, and I didn't know what to think. I'm not used to this, feeling anything, let alone. He trailed off, the word jealousy too raw to speak. Amara's expression softened, but she held his gaze. I get it, Things got personal the other day, and it's messy. But you're my employer, Ethan. We need to keep that clear, for both our sakes. She paused, then added, I like working here. I like talking with you. But we have to communicate, not build walls. Ethan nodded, the weight of her words settling over him. You're right. I'm sorry, Amara. It won't happen again. The apology felt foreign, but her presence made it easier, her honesty mirroring his guarded heart. She offered a small smile, the tension easing. Good. Enjoy your tea. Marcus is waiting, but I'll be back tomorrow to prep breakfast. She turned to leave, then glanced back. Try the chicken. It's better warm. Her teasing tone was a peace offering, and Ethan's lips twitched, a faint smile breaking through. As the door closed, he sipped the tea, its warmth a quiet echo of her. Clara caught his eye downstairs as she tidied the foyer, her knowing look suggesting she'd heard enough. She's got a good head on her shoulders, Clara said softly, and a good heart. Ethan didn't reply, but as he returned to work, the kitchen's lingering warmth felt like a promise he wasn't ready to name. The grand ballroom of the Heritage Hotel shimmered under crystal chandeliers, its opulent space filled with Chicago's elite, tech moguls, philanthropists, and city officials mingling in a sea of tuxedos and gowns. Ethan Caldwell moved through the crowd with practiced ease, his tailored black tuxedo accentuating his lean frame, his blue eyes scanning the room with calculated precision. The Caldwell Innovations Charity Gala, an annual event to fund tech education for underserved youth, was a triumph of optics and influence. Tonight, however, Ethan's focus wasn't on the deals being brokered or the hands he shook. It was on Amara Thompson, whose culinary vision had transformed the evening into something extraordinary. Amara stood near the kitchen doors, her dark curls swept into an elegant updo, her sapphire gown hugging her curves with understated grace. She oversaw the service with quiet authority, her brown eyes bright with pride as servers delivered her creations. Smoked salmon canapes with herbed cream cheese, braised short ribs with a bourbon glaze, and miniature sweet potato pies that had guests murmuring in delight. Ever the steadfast presence, Clara Wentworth coordinated the staff with a nod of approval to Amara, her gray hair gleaming under the lights. The menu was Amara's masterpiece, a blend of Southern soul and modern finesse, and it had already become the talk of the night. Ethan caught her eye across the room, and for a moment, the crowd faded. Since their tense reconciliation after his jealousy over Marcus, their interactions have softened, and a fragile trust has formed between them. He approached her, pausing to greet Evelyn Harper, his mentor and a retired tech executive whose silver bob and sharp gaze commanded respect. "Ethan, the food is divine," Evelyn said, her voice warm but pointed. "Your new chef is a revelation. Introduce me." He led Evelyn to Amara, who turned from a server with a smile. "Amara, this is Evelyn Harper, a longtime friend and advisor," Ethan said, his tone carrying a rare warmth. "Evelyn, Amara Thompson, the genius behind tonight's menu." Amara extended her hand, her smile genuine. "A pleasure, Ms. Harper. I hope you're enjoying the evening." "Immensely," Evelyn replied, her eyes assessing, but kind. "Your short ribs are a work of art. I suspect you've brought something special to this manor and Ethan." Her words held a knowing edge, and Amara's cheeks warmed, though she held her composure. "Thank you," Amara said, glancing at Ethan, whose faint smile betrayed his pride. The moment was interrupted by the band striking up a slow waltz, the notes floating through the ballroom. Evelyn's gaze flicked between them, a spark of mischief in her eyes. "You two should dance," she said, stepping back. "I'll keep an eye on the kitchen." Amara hesitated, her eyes meeting Ethan's. "She said I'm supposed to be working," but her voice lacked conviction. "One dance," Ethan said, offering his hand, his tone soft but insistent. "The guests can wait." Amara placed her hand in his, her touch sending a quiet thrill through him. He led her to the dance floor, one hand on her waist, the other holding hers, grateful for the lessons his mother had insisted on years ago. They moved together, her gown shimmering under the lights, their steps surprisingly in sync. Amara said, "You're full of surprises," softly, her brown eyes searching his. "And dancing with your chef in front of Chicago's elite?" Ethan replied, "You're more than my chef," the words slipping out before he could stop them. Her breath caught, a question flickering in her gaze, but a voice cut through the music before she could respond. "Nathaniel," Victor Langston said, his smile sharp as he approached. Ethan's rival, a tech CEO with a knack for exploitation, stood in a tailored suit, his dark eyes glinting with calculation. "And the lovely Amara. Quite the picture you two make." His tone was smooth, but Ethan's jaw tightened, sensing the barb beneath it. "Victor," Ethan said, his voice cool, keeping Amara close and enjoying the evening. "Immensely," Victor replied, his gaze lingering on Amara. "However, your chef is stealing the show. Those pies are remarkable." "Are you a new partner at Caldwell Innovations, Miss Thompson?" "I'm Mr. Caldwell's chef," Amara said, her tone polite but firm, her hand still in Ethan's. "The menu's my contribution tonight." Victor's eyebrow lifted, his smile not reaching his eyes. "How intriguing." "Nathaniel, you've been keeping this talent under wraps." He paused, his gaze flicking to Ethan. "Though I hear the press is curious about your staff. Photographers are everywhere tonight." The comment felt pointed, and Ethan's grip on Amara's hand tightened, a protective instinct flaring. "Thank you for the concern, Victor," Ethan said, guiding Amara away. "Enjoy the gala." As they moved off the dance floor, he leaned close to her. "He's fishing for something. Be careful." Amara nodded, her expression troubled. "Why would he care about me?" she asked, her voice low. "I'm just the chef." Ethan said, "You're not just anything," his tone fierce, surprising them both. Their eyes met, the air charged with unspoken feelings. Before he could say more, Clara approached, her face calm but urgent. She said, "Mr. Caldwell, the mayor, wants a word," then added quietly to Amara, "The kitchen's under control, but a reporter's asking about the menu. It could be a chance to shine." Amara nodded, squeezing Ethan's arm before returning to her post, her sapphire gown catching the light. As Ethan watched her go, Evelyn reappeared, her expression knowing. "She's extraordinary, Ethan," she said. "But Victor's not wrong. The press is watching. Whatever's between you two, it's not staying private for long." Her warning lingered as Ethan moved to greet the mayor, his mind on Amara, the dance, and the shadow Victor's words cast over the night. The convention center was excited, its sleek halls packed with tech journalists and industry insiders awaiting Caldwell Innovations' latest product launch. Ethan Caldwell stood on the stage, his tailored navy suit sharp under the spotlights, his blue eyes steady despite the nerves coiling in his chest. The neural network system, a years-long endeavor, was performing flawlessly, its interface responding to every command seamlessly. The audience applauded, and Ethan exhaled, relief washing over him, as he fielded questions, deflecting a reporter's probe about a rival's competing product with practiced calm. His thoughts drifted to Amara Thompson, whose quiet support had carried him through the day. Earlier that morning, he'd found a small box in the manor's kitchen, a note in Amara's neat handwriting. "For good luck, Ethan. You've got this. Amara." Inside was a delicate pastry shaped like the Caldwell Innovations logo, its golden crust glazed with honey and cardamom. The small but thoughtful gesture had steadied him, a reminder of her belief in him, despite the distance that had lingered since their dance at the gala. He'd texted her a simple, "Thank you. I needed this," and her reply, "Believe in yourself. I do," had anchored him through the chaos of the launch. As the event wound down, and Ethan escaped the throng of congratulations, he drove back to Caldwell Manor, the pastry's sweetness still on his mind. The house was quiet, but a soft light glowed from Amara's guest cottage in the east wing. Drawn to her, he grabbed the plate she'd left in the warming drawer, grilled salmon with a lemon butter sauce, roasted asparagus, and a glass of champagne with a note. "Celebrate, Ethan. You were terrific on the live stream." Amara. Her thoughtfulness pierced him, and he found himself walking to her cottage, plate in hand, determined to thank her in person. He knocked, his heart pounding with gratitude and something more profound. Amara opened the door, her dark curls loose around her shoulders, her jeans and soft sweater contrasting the gala's elegance. Her brown eyes widened in surprise. "Ethan, I didn't expect you back so soon. Congratulations. The launch looked perfect." "Thanks to you," he said, holding up the plate, his voice softer than usual. It means more than you know." She shook her head, stepping aside to let him in. "I didn't write the code. That was all you." Her cottage was warm, filled with soft lighting and the faint scent of jasmine. She gestured to the couch, where a half-watched movie flickered on the TV. "Want to join me?" I was relaxing with an old rom-com. Ethan hesitated, then nodded, settling beside her. "To your success," she said, clinking her champagne glass against his. They talked easily, the awkwardness of recent weeks fading as he shared details of the launch, Victor Langston's calculating presence in the front row, The reporters pointed questions. "He mentioned you," Ethan said, frowning. "It felt off, like he's watching us." Amara's brow furrowed. "Why me?" "I'm your chef." Her voice held a trace of unease, but she brushed it off, laughing at a scene in the movie. As the night deepened, her head drooped onto his shoulder, her breathing slowing as she dozed. Ethan froze, savoring her warmth, the scent of her hair, coconut and jasmine, stirring a longing he couldn't ignore. When the movie ended, he touched her shoulder gently. "Amara," he whispered, "it's over." She stirred, blinking up at him, her eyes sleepy but soft. "Sorry, I must have been tired." She smiled, and in that moment, with the lamplight casting shadows across her face, Ethan couldn't hold back. He leaned down, his lips brushing hers in a tentative kiss, a question rather than a demand. For a heartbeat, she froze, and fear gripped him. Had he misread her? Then her hands rested on his chest, and she kissed him back, her lips sweet and warm, igniting a spark that made his heart ache. They pulled apart, breathless, her eyes wide with surprise. Ethan said I shouldn't have done that, though he couldn't regret it. "No," Amara agreed softly, her hand still on his chest. "But I didn't stop you." The admission hung between them, full of possibility and danger. "What now?" she whispered. "We'll talk tomorrow," he said, standing reluctantly. "Good night, Amara." As he left, the night air felt colder, his lips tingling with the memory of her. Morning brought chaos. Clara knocked urgently, her face pale, handing Ethan a tablet. A gossip site blared. Tech Titan's secret affair. Ethan Caldwell's steamy romance with his chef. Photos showed their gala dance, Amara's head on his shoulder, and worst of all, their kiss in her doorway, captured by Victor's tipped-off paparazzi. The article painted Amara as a gold digger, reducing her talent to lurid speculation. Ethan rushed to the kitchen, where Amara stood, her phone trembling in her hand, her brown eyes filled with hurt. "They're saying I seduced you for your money," she said, her voice breaking. "My reputation, everything I've worked for, is ruined." "I'll fix this," Ethan promised, stepping toward her. "I'll release a statement and make it clear this isn't true." "How?" she snapped, stepping back. "The damage is done. Every chef I've worked with, my grandmother, Marcus, they'll see this and think I'm a fraud." Tears welled, but she wiped them away, her chin high. "I need time away, Ethan. I called Marcus. He's picking me up." "Please, Amara," Ethan began, but his phone rang, his PR director demanding a response. By the time he hung up, Amara was upstairs, packing. He waited in the foyer, pacing, until she descended with a small suitcase, her eyes red but resolute. He said, "You don't have to leave." Desperation creeping into his voice. "We can face this together." "I need to protect what's left of my career," she replied, her voice steady despite the pain. "And I need to figure out if we are worth this cost." A car horn sounded. "Marcus." Amara picked up her suitcase, pausing at the door. "I'll call you," she said softly, then left, the door closing with a finality that left Ethan alone in the echoing manor. The warmth she'd brought snuffed out like a candle. The silence of Caldwell Manor was deafening without Amara Thompson's presence. Each empty hallway a reminder of the warmth she'd brought, and the void her absence left behind. Ethan Caldwell sat at his desk, his blue eyes fixed on a tablet displaying the lingering tabloid headline, Tech Titan's Secret Affair. The photos, his dance with Amara, their kiss in her cottage doorway, mocked him, a betrayal orchestrated by Victor Langston's machinations. 3 days had passed since Amara left to stay with her brother Marcus, and her silence weighed heavier than any business crisis Ethan had faced. His PR team's vague statement, "Mr. Caldwell respects his employees' privacy," he had done little to quell the rumors, and his attempts to focus on Caldwell innovations felt futile against the ache in his chest. He'd texted her once, and it was a simple message. "I hope you're okay. I miss you." But no reply came. Once alive with her laughter and the scent of her cooking, the manor felt like a tomb again. Clara Wentworth, the housekeeper, had watched him with quiet sympathy, her gray hair catching the light as she delivered a white envelope that morning. Inside was Amara's handwriting. "Ethan, I need more time. Please don't contact me for now. I'll reach out when I'm ready. Amara." The words cut deep, her formality a barrier he hadn't expected. He reread the note, searching for warmth, but found only resolve. Desperate to bridge the gap, Ethan made a decision. If Amara used food to connect, he would speak her language. He called his assistant, his voice firm. "Cancel my meetings today. Find me the address for Lillian Thompson." 2 hours later, Ethan stood on the porch of a modest brick house in a quiet Chicago neighborhood, a bag of groceries in his arms. Peaches, flour, cinnamon, a bottle of bourbon for the glaze. His heart pounded as he rang the bell, his tailored sweater feeling out of place in this homely setting. The door opened to reveal Lillian, Amara's grandmother, her sharp brown eyes assessing him with a mix of curiosity and wariness, her silver curls framing a face etched with wisdom. "Mr. Caldwell," Lillian said, her voice warm but guarded. "I figured you'd show up eventually. Come in." She led him to a cozy kitchen, the air rich with the scent of coffee and baked apples. Photos of Amara adorned the walls, grinning as a child with a mixing bowl, beaming at her culinary school graduation. Ethan set the groceries on the table, his hands unsteady. "Is Amara here?" he asked, though he knew the answer. "She's with Marcus," Lillian said, pouring 2 cups of coffee. "But sit. We need to talk." She gestured to a chair, her gaze piercing. "You're the reason my granddaughter's hurting. Those tabloids made her look like a schemer, not the chef she's worked to be." Ethan's throat tightened, shame washing over him. "I never meant for this to happen," he said quietly. "I should have protected her better." "You should have," Lillian agreed, her tone blunt but not unkind. "But that's not why she left. She's falling for you, Ethan, and that scares her. Love makes you vulnerable, and Amara's been hurt before. Her father left when she was young, and a boy in culinary school stole her recipes and her dreams to get ahead. She's careful with her heart." Ethan absorbed her words, seeing Amara in a new light. "She's falling for me?" he asked, the revelation both thrilling and daunting. Lillian nodded, sipping her coffee. "And you're falling for her, aren't you? But you've never let yourself love before, have you?" Her directness disarmed him, forcing him to confront truths he'd buried since his parents' death. "No," he admitted, his voice low. "After the crash, I had to run Caldwell Innovations. There was no room for weakness, for feelings. I shut that part of myself off. Until Amara." The admission felt like shedding armor, raw and exposing. Lillian's eyes softened. "So, what are you going to do about it?" Ethan said, "I want to make her something," gesturing to the groceries. "Her peach cobbler, the one we made together. It was the first time I felt connected. I want her to know I understand what food means to her." He paused, then added, "I'm in love with her, Lillian. I need her to know that." A smile touched Lillian's lips. "That's a language Amara understands. Let's get to work." They stood side by side for hours, Lillian guiding him through the recipe, kneading dough with a hint of orange zest, layering peaches with cinnamon, crafting a bourbon glaze. As they worked, she shared stories of Amara's childhood, her determination to perfect biscuits at 10, her resilience after her ex's betrayal. "She's strong," Lillian said, showing Ethan how to crimp the dough. "But she needs someone who'll put her first, not just chase his empire." When the cobbler emerged, golden and fragrant, Lillian packed it carefully. "Here's Marcus's address," she said, handing him a slip of paper. "But Ethan, if you're not serious, walk away now. She deserves someone who'll love her completely." "I am," Ethan said, his voice steady with conviction. "I want to be that man." Lillian studied him, then nodded, her approval a quiet gift. Ethan knocked at Marcus's downtown apartment, the cobbler container warm. Marcus opened the door, his expression wary. "Mr. Caldwell," he said. "How'd you find us?" "Your grandmother," Ethan admitted. "I need to talk to Amara." Marcus hesitated, but Amara's voice called from inside. "Who is it?" She appeared, her brown eyes shadowed, her curls loose. "Ethan," she said, her voice guarded. "What are you doing here?" "I brought this," he said, holding up the cobbler. "Can we talk?" Marcus stepped aside, leaving them alone in the small living room, books and guitars scattered around. Amara crossed her arms. "I said I needed time." "I know," Ethan said, setting the cobbler on the coffee table, its aroma filling the space. "But I couldn't wait. I made this with Lillian's help. Your peach cobbler, with orange zest and bourbon glaze." Her eyes widened, a flicker of surprise breaking her resolve. "You made this?" she asked, skeptical. She broke off a piece, tasting it, her expression softening. "Not bad," she said, a small smile tugging at her lips. "Why go to all this trouble?" "Because you taught me food is a connection," Ethan said, stepping closer. "And because I'm in love with you, Amara. I want to fix this. I'll fund your restaurant, Soul Haven. Not as your boss, but as an investor. So you can have your dream without me holding power over you." His voice was earnest, his blue eyes pleading. Amara's breath caught, her eyes glistening. "You love me?" she whispered. "Ethan, I'm falling for you too. But it terrifies me. The tabloids, my career. It's all so much." He said, "We'll face it together." His voice soft but firm. "Take all the time you need. But please, come back." She nodded slowly, her hand brushing his, a promise of reconciliation as the scent of cobbler wrapped around them. The Grand Plaza Hotel's ballroom glowed with soft amber light, its chandeliers casting a warm sheen over tables draped in ivory linens. The Children's Hospital Charity Dinner, a cornerstone of Chicago's philanthropic calendar, buzzed with the city's elite, business leaders, politicians, and socialites mingling in a dance of influence. Ethan Caldwell stood at the entrance, his tailored black tuxedo accentuating his lean frame, his blue eyes scanning the crowd with resolve and nervous anticipation. Tonight was different from the countless galas he'd hosted. Tonight, Amara Thompson stood by his side, not as his chef, but as his partner. Their relationship was no longer a secret to be hidden. Amara's crimson gown shimmered under the lights, its elegant cut highlighting her graceful poise, her dark curls swept up in a style Lillian, her grandmother, had helped perfect. Her brown eyes held a quiet strength as she took Ethan's arm, her touch steadying him against the weight of the cameras flashing outside. With its vicious portrayal of Amara as a gold digger, the tabloid scandal had shaken her, but her return to Caldwell Manor after a week with Marcus had brought clarity. She'd agreed to face the world with Ethan, to reclaim her narrative. "Ready?" he asked, his voice low, offering his arm. She took a deep breath, her smile resolute. "As ready as I'll ever be." They stepped onto the red carpet, cameras erupting in a frenzy, capturing the moment that would dominate tomorrow's society pages. Ethan proudly introduced Amara to colleagues, his hand resting lightly on her back, a silent promise of support. Some guests raised eyebrows, others whispered, but Amara's poise silenced doubters. Clara Wentworth, coordinating the event staff, caught Amara's eye from across the room, her gray hair gleaming as she gave a nod of encouragement. As they reached their table, a familiar voice interrupted. "Nathaniel," Victor Langston said, his dark eyes glinting with calculated charm, his suit as sharp as his intentions. "And the lovely Amara. You two make quite the statement." His smile was a blade, and Ethan's jaw tightened, sensing the threat beneath the pleasantries. "Victor," Ethan replied, his tone cool, keeping Amara close and enjoying the evening. "Immensely," Victor said, his gaze lingering on Amara. "The mystery of your arrangement is solved. A striking couple indeed." His words dripped with insinuation, a nod to the tabloid rumors he'd likely fueled. Amara's eyes narrowed, her voice steady. "Thank you, Mr. Langston. Though I'm surprised you're so invested in my role as a chef. You might have a hand in those tabloid stories." Her directness caught Victor off guard, his smile faltering for a fraction of a second. "A coincidence, I assure you," he replied, recovering smoothly. "However, it's been entertaining to see Nathaniel show some humanity." He paused, his eyes flicking to Ethan. "Love makes one vulnerable." "You're wrong, Victor," Ethan said, his voice calm but firm. "Love makes me stronger." He guided Amara away before Victor could respond, her hand squeezing his arm in quiet approval. "Did you see his face?" she whispered, a spark of amusement in her eyes. "He didn't expect me to call him out." "You were magnificent," Ethan said, his smile genuine. They settled at their table, where Lillian and Marcus joined them, their presence a grounding force. Lillian's sharp eyes softened as she patted Amara's hand, while Marcus, ever protective, watched Ethan closely, his nod a cautious endorsement. The dinner unfolded smoothly, and Amara's menu, herbed roasted chicken, wild rice pilaf, and blackberry cobbler, earned praise, which was a testament to her talent and reclaiming the spotlight. As dessert was served, Ethan reached into his pocket, his heart racing. "Amara," he said, drawing her attention. He opened a small velvet box, revealing a golden key, not a ring. Her eyes widened. "He said this is for your restaurant space, Soul Haven, the old Romano's building on 5th Street. I put down a deposit, which is fully refundable if it's not right. I believe in you, Amara, and I want you to have this, free of any strings." Amara stared at the key, tears glistening. "You bought it?" she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I invested in your dream," Ethan clarified. "You'll have complete control. This is about you, not us." His words addressed the power imbalance that had haunted her, offering freedom to pursue her vision. Before she could respond, a reporter approached, microphone in hand. "Ms. Thompson, the tabloids called you a gold digger. Any comment?" The room quieted, eyes turning to her. Amara stood, her chin high, the key in her hand. "I'm a chef," she said, her voice clear. "My food speaks for itself. Tonight's menu, my work at Caldwell Manor, and soon, my restaurant, Soul Haven. I've earned my place through talent, not headlines." The room erupted in applause, and Ethan's chest swelled with pride. Later, in the ballroom's center, Ethan pulled Amara into his arms, kissing her deeply as cameras flashed. "No more hiding," he murmured, their foreheads touching. "No more hiding," she echoed, her smile radiant, the key clutched tightly as they faced the world together. The warm glow of string lights bathed Soul Haven, Amara Thompson's restaurant, in a soft, inviting ambiance. The former Romano's building on 5th Street had been transformed into a vibrant space, its exposed brick walls adorned with local art, its open kitchen alive with the sizzle of pans and the laughter of Amara's team. 6 months after its grand opening, Soul Haven was Chicago's culinary darling. Its Southern-inspired dishes, okra fritters, bourbon-glazed pork, peach cobbler, earning raves from critics, and a wait list stretching months. The restaurant celebrated its half-year anniversary tonight, and the air buzzed with anticipation as guests filled the cozy dining room, their chatter mingling with the scent of fresh herbs and warm spices. Amara moved through the kitchen with graceful command, her dark curls pinned loosely, her chef's coat crisp despite the evening's rush. Her brown eyes sparkled with pride as she plated a final dessert, a miniature sweet potato pie, topped with a dollop of bourbon cream. Ethan Caldwell stood by her side, his tailored blazer contrasting with the flour-dusted chaos, his blue eyes soft with admiration. They had left Caldwell Manor's cold grandeur behind, moving into a smaller, warmer home closer to the restaurant, a house filled with Amara's laughter and the scent of her cooking. Once fraught with barriers, their relationship had blossomed into a partnership built on trust, respect, and a love neither had expected. Clara Wentworth, her gray hair catching the light, coordinated the front of house with quiet efficiency, her smile warm as she greeted guests. Lillian, Amara's grandmother, sat at a corner table with Marcus and her brother, their faces beaming with pride. The ribbon cutting earlier had been a triumph. With Amara's vision, every detail from the menu to the decor shining through. She'd insisted on a formal investment agreement with Ethan, her lawyers ensuring transparency. So Soul Haven was hers, not a gift, but a testament to her talent. Critics hailed her cuisine as unpretentious yet profound, and tonight's event, packed with food writers and loyal patrons, cemented her place in Chicago's culinary scene. As the last guests savored their desserts, Amara slipped into the kitchen, Ethan following. The staff had gone home, leaving the space quiet, the air still warm with the day's cooking. "A new recipe?" Ethan asked, slipping his arms around her waist from behind, his voice teasing as he peered at the counter, where Amara rolled out dough. "No, an old one," she replied, turning in his embrace, her smile radiant. "Peach cobbler, the first thing we made together." She gestured to the ingredients: fresh peaches, cinnamon, a hint of orange zest, her eyes softening with memory. "It feels right for tonight." Ethan grinned, the moment taking him back to that morning in the Manor's kitchen, when flour and laughter had cracked open his guarded heart. "Our beginning," he said, brushing a curl from her face. "Though you said it was one of many." "Every day with you is a new start," Amara corrected, rising on her toes to kiss him softly, her lips warm and sweet, a new flavor to discover. Their kiss deepened, a quiet promise in the stillness of the kitchen, until Ethan pulled back, his expression suddenly serious. "I have something to ask you," he said, his voice steady, despite the nervous flutter in his chest. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a small jewelry box. Not a key this time, but a ring. Amara's breath caught as he opened it, revealing a simple diamond set in rose gold, its elegant mirror to her own. "Amara Thompson," he said, his blue eyes locked on hers. "You taught me to taste life, to open my heart to joy, to love, to possibility. Will you marry me?" Tears welled in Amara's eyes, her smile trembling as she nodded, too overcome for words at first. "Yes," she finally whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Yes, I'll marry you, Ethan Caldwell." He slipped the ring onto her finger, its weight a promise of forever. The oven timer dinged, announcing the cobbler's readiness, and they both laughed, the sound bright and unguarded. Amara said that our first meal was as an engaged couple, pulling the golden cobbler from the oven, its aroma wrapping around them like a warm embrace. They sat at a small table in the empty restaurant, sharing slices of cobbler and a bottle of champagne, the bubbles catching the light. Clara peeked in, her eyes twinkling as she spotted the ring, giving Amara a knowing nod before slipping out. Marcus and Lillian, lingering outside, caught Amara's eye through the window, their smiles a silent blessing. "What are you thinking?" Amara asked, noticing Ethan's contemplative gaze as he took her hand across the table. "About taste," he said, his voice soft. "Not just food, but life. How bland it was before you, how rich it is now." He squeezed her hand, his thumb brushing the ring. "Soul Haven, this moment. It's all more than I ever imagined." Amara's smile warmed him from within. She said, "We're just getting started," her eyes gleaming with love, a lifetime of flavors to explore together. "I can't wait," Ethan said, meaning it with every fiber of his being. With Amara by his side, every day promised new joy, new adventure, a life sweeter than any cobbler, richer than any empire he'd built. As they toasted to their future, the restaurant's lights dimmed, leaving them in a cocoon of warmth, ready to savor whatever came next.